This is Pranav Guha Thakurta from EduTV. Today, we have got legal experts with us. We have Advocate Kritika Padode from Vijay Bhumi University, Karjat, Mumbai. We have Dr. Imran Muhammad from the Law Department of Shobit University, Meerut. Welcome, both of you. I think we should start with the lady first.
Thank you so much, Mr. Guha, for this wonderful opportunity to interact with all of these bright students who have decided, to take legal studies as an optional in the 11th and 12th. Thank you so much, Abhishek sir, for having us and giving us this opportunity to interact with your students today. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kritika Padode Bhandari. I'm a practicing advocate in the Supreme Court of India as well as the Delhi High Court. I am an alumnus of National Law University, Delhi. And currently, I am also a member of the founding team of Vijay Bhumi University, India's first liberal professional university, right? So since I'm a practicing advocate and my area of interest largely is in the domain of constitutional law, so I thought that, I could not think of a better topic to engage with young minds than the Constitution of India. I'm not sure if you guys have already covered some facets in it during your lectures with, I would have loved to do this with all of you to make it a little more interactive and to receive your inputs. But unfortunately now due to the pandemic, um, we have to maintain social distancing and I can't be physically present with you. So I will try to make this session as engaging as possible. In the meanwhile, can I just request all the students if you can just keep your videos on so that I can see all of you? Is that possible?
Yeah, why not? But we'll keep everyone.
Because it becomes easier for me to engage then with them. Otherwise, it will seem like I'm only talking to Mr. Guha and Mr. Abhishek Singh, who probably don't need a sermon on the Constitution. So if I may just request the students, I see Tripti, I see Devika, Vaibhav, Tejas, Shloka, Grisha, if you may just put your videos on, if it's possible, so that I can just see you guys while I'm interacting with you to see that how well you're able to understand what I'm talking about.
I think we have got non-video participants also with us. Okay. Hi, Tejas.
Thank you so much, Tejas. Thank you so much for putting your video on. Okay, fine, guys. Like I said, today I'm going to talk to you about the Constitution of India. So actually, Mr. Singh told me that I think you guys are somewhere in between of understanding the concept of rule of law, right? Ideally, I would have liked to start this with a question that, what is your understanding of the concept of rule of law? So since Tejas, I can see you, I'm sorry, you might have to be the scapegoat here. Can you tell me that what is your understanding of the rule of law? And guys, you're interacting with a lawyer. Remember, you can say whatever comes to your mind and just please don't feel any reservation at all. So Tejas, could you just tell us what is your understanding of the concept of rule of law?
In my basic understanding, I believe that rule of law is something that everybody in this country, every citizen, even the prime minister of the country is equal. Everybody is equal and law is the supreme thing in this country.
Absolutely, that's a very
and law is binding on all the citizens of the country regardless of any discrimination.
Super, that's a super accurate answer. So like Tejas said, right, rule of law, just very simply put, means that the law is the supreme dictum that is going to be followed by every citizen. Nobody in our country is going to be above the law, right? And when I talk about, this rule of law and the law being the supreme body that is going to govern each and every citizen of the country, necessarily that is going to lead me to the Constitution of India. So before I start, talking to you a little more about the Constitution of India, I think it's important for me also to talk to you and give you some interesting facts about the Constitution of India. Firstly, I don't know how many of you know this, but the Indian Constitution is the longest written constitution in the world of any democratic country, right? Another very fun fact that you guys should know about the Indian Constitution is that our Constitution is also borrowed from a lot of many different constitutions. Like, for example, today I'm going to be talking to you specifically about the preamble of the Constitution. So you will see that some elements of the preamble of the Constitution have been borrowed from the Irish Constitution. The same way, different parts of our Constitution, be it the fundamental rights, be it the directive principles of the state policy, a lot of different parts have been borrowed from very many different constitutions across the globe. That is why it is known that the Indian Constitution is a borrowed constitution. Now, before I actually talk about the document itself, it's also really important for all of us to appreciate the effort that has gone into preparing this magnanimous document, right? I don't know how many of you again know this, but this particular document was prepared by a committee which had 299 members post the partition of India. And for all, I see a lot of women who are there on this post with me. You might be really happy to know that out of the 299 members, there were 9 women. So think about it. Back then, when women did not have access to education, when women were not allowed to work, we still had 9 women who were, part of the committee that made the Constitution of India. Now, this particular constitution took actually 3 years for the entire constitution to be drafted. So to start very precisely, the work on our constitution started in December 1946, and it went on till 26th November 1949 is when our constitution was adopted. So again, the 26th November date is when, in the legal fraternity, we celebrate it as Constitution Day or Law Day, as it's also known. So the Constitution was prepared by 26th November. And then what happened is finally, it came into effect on 26th January 1950. And that is when we celebrate our Republic Day, right? So this is the entire chain of events. And now you would also understand the fact that what is the significance behind celebrating 26th January as our Republic Day every year, right? Okay, I have one question because I see a couple of you guys here with me. By any chance, anybody happens to know who was the chairperson of the drafting committee of the Indian Constitution? Anybody would like to take a go?
Dr. B.R. Ambedkar.
Yes, absolutely right, Tejas. It was Dr. B.R. Ambedkar who was the chairperson of the drafting committee of the Indian Constitution. Absolutely right. So today what I thought about is, rather than going into the structure and, what all entails in the Constitution, why don't I talk to you guys about the spirit and the backbone of the Constitution, which is the preamble of the Constitution. Any of you guys have any prior ideas about what is the preamble of the Constitution and what is its significance? Guys, feel free. Just take a go. It doesn't matter. It's right or it's wrong. Just feel free. It's an open platform.
It declares India to be a socialist, secular, democratic, and republic nation.
Absolutely. So in our preamble of the Constitution, we have declared that India is a socialist, sovereign, secular, socialist republic. Absolutely right. Anybody else? Come on. What is the significance of the preamble of the Constitution? Absolutely right, Grisha. Anybody else would like to go with it? Try it.
Describes the basic structure of the constitution and how the India will be governed.
Okay, it describes the basic structure of the Constitution and how India will be governed. Okay, those are two very heavy terms, but yes, I will take it for sure. Yes, it definitely lays down the spirit in which our entire Constitution was made, and what is the duty that is owed by the state to its citizens and what the state expects from its citizens. Absolutely right. Anybody else? I see a couple of more people. Vaibhav, yes.
It shows the unity and the brotherhood of the country.
Vaibhav, can you put on your camera?
Sir, yes, I can. Wait a second.
Let us have your expressions also.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It does lay down the fact that India strongly believes in the principle of brotherhood and unity. Absolutely right. Very, very good. Anything else that comes out from the virtue of the preamble of the Constitution?
Yeah, Vaibhav, you want to say something? Or ma'am, or he said?
I got
I
what he
said,
said.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much, Vaibhav. Very good response. Devika, Abhishek, Tripti, Shloka, Kinshul, Arif, Shobh, Bushra, anybody would like to take a go? Okay, guys. So just as all of your friends have said it, right? So what this does is the preamble of the constitution, it lays down the governing structure of the country and the spirit and the important ideals that the country is absolutely purely believes in, right? Now, what is the importance of, the preamble? Preamble, if I may say, as we may understand, it is some sort of an introduction to this huge document that has been created, right? So what is the importance of this, this introduction that has been created? Is it something that can be used in the court of law? That's the question that we need to ask ourselves, that why is this even there in the first place? I mean, they could have just might as well very well started from, Article 1 of the Constitution of India, which, lays down the, and start off with the various provisions. What was the point of, laying down this introduction? Now the answer to that is that, the preamble of the constitution lays down the spirit of the constitution. So whenever the court or anybody is interpreting any provision of the constitution of India, you must always make sure that you are in conformity with the spirit of the constitution, which is available to you in the preamble of the constitution of India. And in fact, there are very many Supreme Court judgments, the most landmark of it being, have you guys heard of a case called Keshwanand Bharti case?
yes,
Yes, so I see a
Yes,
couple of
ma'am.
people nodding. What is the biggest, what is the one fact that you can remember that makes Keshwanand Bharti case stand out from all the other cases that you have heard of?
ma'am, that the
Basically,
Ma'am,
basic
it had a 13
integrity
judge.
basic
of the
structure cannot be changed by the
mandate
legislature.
cannot be
Yes,
amended.
so that was in the correct, absolutely right, that in the ratio it was given that
It
basic
had a
structure of
13 bench judge.
absolutely, Shloka. So very good points being made. I just love the fact. Kudos to Abhishek sir for teaching you pretty well. But yeah, absolutely. So first thing is, yes, it had laid down a very important dictum that we all follow, that the basic structure of the Indian Constitution cannot be altered. And the second and most important thing, significance, is that in India till now, there has been no case which has had a larger bench strength than Keshwanand Bharti, which was a 13-judge bench that gave that particular decision, right? So in Keshwanand Bharti, and I must tell you, if you guys, any of you are, going to be wanting to do law, when you come into law school, this is one decision that you're going to dread. Because this decision, I'm sure, the lawyers who are joining me here, Imran sir, and I don't know if Abhishek sir is a lawyer as well, and he's done law as well. But, they will tell you that in their law school days, because that judgment runs into thousands of pages, it was torture for all of us. And there were so many important principles that were actually laid down in that particular case. And one of them was that the preamble must be read as a part of the Indian Constitution. So it is not like that the Indian Constitution only starts from Article 1 and this preamble is just there. No, we will read the preamble as a part of the Indian Constitution whenever you're interpreting any provision of the of the Constitution, and there is some confusion because every provision, when you guys read it, you can see that as a lawyer you can always debate it from two sides, right? How do you figure out which is the right interpretation? This is the interpretative tool that you need to use, which is you refer to the preamble of the Constitution and see that what are the important constitutional ideals for our democratic country, and keeping that in mind, then you interpret those provisions, right? So a little bit of understanding this case. I wanted you guys to understand that how the preamble is actually a part of the Indian Constitution. So now, actually, I thought that it's so important, like it's one of the most beautifully drafted preambles, and I think it really does sort of lay down, what is the sort of, what is the spirit of our country. So I thought that before we delve into it further, let's actually read the preamble of the constitution. So, it says, we the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, and to secure to all its citizens justice, which is social, economic, and political, liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship, equality of status and opportunity, and to promote among them all fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual and the unity and integrity of the nation. So, guys, what are the important keywords in the constitution, in the preamble? Let's just sort of, highlight those and talk a little bit about it so that it's etched in your memory and you guys know that what is the spirit with which this document was made. First,
Sovereign.
the people of India. Yeah, so I'll just come to that, Disha. But the first important thing is we, the people of India. Okay, this reflects the fact that this is a constitution that is made by the people and for the people. Always remember that, because this is the biggest ideal of a democracy, that it's basically we are governed by a document which is the supreme law of the land, which is made in accordance with the will of the citizens and the will of the people of our nation, right? So that is why this phrase is very, very important. The other ones that Grisha was pointing out: sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic, republic. Now, out of this, in the original constitution, the words that were present was sovereign, democratic, republic. The two words that were not a part of the constitution back then, the preamble back then, were the words socialist and secular. These actually came in via a constitutional amendment by virtue of the 42nd. Correct. Who answered the 42nd constitutional amendment?
Tejas.
Very good, Tejas. Absolutely right. That the terms socialist and secular came via the 42nd constitutional amendment. And mind you, guys, how did that happen? That happened post the Keshwanand Bharati case. Because in Keshwanand Bharati case, the Supreme Court laid down that preamble is part of the Indian Constitution. Because preamble is part of the Indian Constitution, that means that it can be amended by virtue of Article 368 of the Indian Constitution, that clearly says that you can amend provisions of the Indian Constitution. Hence, by virtue of that is when in the 42nd amendment, we had introduced the words socialist and secular. Now, guys, very quickly, what is your understanding of the word sovereign? Come on, quick.
Self-governing, self-ruling, self-governing without any external power.
Absolutely.
Sovereign means that in own independent authority.
Absolutely. That India is her own independent authority. She will not be led by any other nation. We will decide for ourselves that what decisions are we going to take. Absolutely right. Now, what does the word socialist mean?
Ma'am, it has many meanings. Like for specifically India, it is related to equally treat everybody, and the government should be playing a major role in decreasing the disparity of the people of the country.
Very good,
And
Weber. Yeah, go on. Please go on.
ma'am, I was saying that socialist can also mean very differently, like the USSR one is a pretty different concept than the.
Very important point that you're highlighting. So, guys, please, this is a very important fact that Weber has highlighted. Thank you, Weber, for highlighting it. You will notice words like socialist and secular also, which I will come to later. They have different interpretations in different countries. But if I were to talk about the Indian context, when we interpret the word socialist, it means it refers to a political economic system where we want equality in opportunity to all, right? So that is what we refer to by the word socialist. And now I think another very important term of the constitution, which is hotly debated at all points, the word secular. What does secular mean to all of us?
In the
Ma'am, the
Constitution of
equal
India,
treatment of all the religions, because India is a multifarious country and people practice and profess many religions, and there have been many conflicts and communal rights related. So the secular word means the treatment of all the religions equally, and the right of the people to profess and practice any religion of their own.
Very
And there
good.
will be also no official
And
religion
India
of
does
the
not
country.
have an official
Any
religion.
official religion.
Right, absolutely right.
Now, also
Simran.
interference of any authorized government in any aspects of any regional activity.
We have Dr. Imran from Law College of Shobit University. Sir.
I'm thankful to you, Kirtika ma'am, for making the journey in a very smooth and lucid manner that I was enjoying that what you are explaining in a very lucid and impressive styles. And I'm also thankful to to Mr. Guha for organizing this event and giving me an opportunity to speak with the young minds.
We should thank Mr. Abhishek.
So as
We should thank Mr. Abhishek Singh.
Obviously, without his efforts, it was a distant reality. I'm thankful to you, Abhishek, also. As I was listening to you, Abhishek, you were asking that I should speak on rule of law. You have to understand that what the rule of law means. I was listening, one of you was saying that no man is above law, equal treatment of the law. It is very obvious and very well taken point that the rule of law means that nobody is above the law. But to understand this concept of rule of law, we have to go back in the history that where from it comes and where the rule of law was derived. So formally, if we see that where from we taken or where from it has been originated, there are various jurists were there, like the John Finnis, the Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau, and finally it was formally propounded by the A.V. Dicey. And what does A.V. Dicey said about the rule of law? He has given three basic pillars of the rule of law. That is the supremacy of the law, and supremacy of the law, equality of the law, and predominance of the legal spirit. The whole rule of law is based on three pillars. What do you mean by supremacy of law? Can anyone please tell me quickly?
That anything is not beyond the law. Law is the supreme thing and nobody can oppose it. Everybody has to follow.
Okay. Let me explain it. As I have Mr. Guha have bounded me that I have to finish in 10 minutes only. So I will explain that what is the supremacy of the law means that there should be a piece of legislation or there should be a legislation on which the law will, all the laws will drive their powers and the authorities. And what is the supreme law of the land in India?
Constitution of India.
Constitution of India. We have the Constitution of India as a supreme law of the land, and all the laws drives their powers and authorities from the Constitution. And if you see the Article 13 of Constitution, it says that as we all know that there are the separation of power is there, and there are three organs of the government working separately in their own spheres, and the legislative body is meant for the legislation. Then the executive part is done by the executive body, and the judiciary will take up the administration of the justice and the implementation and the interpretation of the laws. Means it has been given the power to the Supreme Court under Article 13 that if any law is inconsistent with the fundamental rights, then the Supreme Court can declare that law void up to that part or the whole part of that legislation. What does it mean? That the rule of law, basic essence of the rule of law is the end of the tyranny, is the end of the monarchy. Means there was a concept before the formal codification of the laws, as we see or read in the history books that there were kingship and the queenships were there, and the words which has been uttered by the king or queen was the law. On that basis, there was the chances were high for the anarchy or the monarchy. So, to keep in mind, while framing the constitution, before commencing the constitution, the concept was came from the England by A.V. Dicey. So the ultimate purpose to propound the theory of rule of law is to make the supremacy of the law, means the all are equal in the eye of the law and all will be treated. Law will govern the society or the state. No other person or the man will govern the society. It is the law which will govern the society. So it is equal to all. Then the equality before the law. As we know that in our Indian constitution, we have Article 14, where the equality before the law was given. And the concept of equality has been molded in two folds. That is the equality before the law and the equal protection of the laws. And if we look at the equality before the law, means if there is any law is meant for you, is meant for me only. There is no provision that for you there will be another law and for me there will be another law. For the prime minister there will be another law. For the person who belongs to a constable post, there will be another law. Means law will be equally treated or will be implemented equally. Means there will be the same law by which we all are governed. Then the predominance of the legal spirit. What does it mean? Predominance of legal spirit means that if there are 2 points are there, that law will be treated equally or equal administration of law should be there, the basic law of the land will be there. Then if there is no mechanism to implement that spirit, it is of no use. How it will be useful? If there will be a mechanism to implement that law. How you will take this point that the law is there, but the implementation part is not there. The administration of justice is not there. We are not getting justice properly from the judiciary part. So there are the courts are there, the Supreme Court is there, the High Court is there, and if any law is being violated or any rights of us is being violated, we have the courts. In the hierarchy wise, we can see, or we can go to the direct to the Supreme Court or to the High Court under Article 32 or 226. Under Article 32, we can go to the Supreme Court directly for the infringement of our fundamental rights. And under Article 226, we can go to the High Courts for the implementation of our fundamental rights as well as the legal rights. So there is an implementation mechanism is there, and which provides that we are safe. Similarly, generally I talk with my students, whenever I talk to my students, when I talk about the rights, I talk the duties first. Because there is a concept that if we are saying the rule of law that no man should be punished except accordance with the law, or no man will be punished except the procedure which has been established by the law, or we talk oftenly about our rights. But we forgot to talk about the duties. If we have the part 3rd in the constitution as our fundamental rights has been given in that part, we have the another part 4th that contains the fundamental duties also. And it is our duties, if we are claiming for the right, we have to obey the duty. And similarly, how it is useful in our day-to-day life, the rule of law, the concept of rule of law we talk about, we see that we have to, we are duty bound. We have to follow the duty. We have to use our rights. Whenever we talk about the rights, we should think about the duties first. If we think about the duties, the rights shall be protected by itself. Because our rights are associated with some others' duties. Some others' rights are associated with our duties. So we have to keep in mind also. Similarly, if we talk about the judicial pronouncement of the related to the rule of law and the basic merits of the rule of law, we see that there are various merits of the rule of law is there, like it reverses the tyranny or anarchy. Means if we will give the power in one hand, as there is a saying that power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupt absolutely. There is a concept, there is an English saying that power tends to corrupt and absolute power corrupt absolutely. So means if the power lies in one hand, then the chances of the monarchy will be very high, and the pupil, the person who is having the power in one hand only, he can abuse that power. So keeping in mind there is a division of power is there, the accountability has been set out, and there are various judgments given by the Supreme Court, and the Honorable Supreme Court has given various judgment on that point, that the rule of law is the basic structure of the Constitution and it cannot be destroyed at all. As you all know that some of you people were saying that it is the preamble is the basic structure of the Constitution, and Madam very aptly described that we can amend the Constitution, we can amend the preamble, but we cannot destroy the basic structure of the Constitution. So if we look at the another merit, we see that it puts legal barriers to the governmental arbitrariness. Means there are some organs of the government which I have earlier mentioned, that we have the judiciary, we have the executive, and we have the legislative parts. So it is the duty, or the rule of law put the barriers on the governmental arbitrariness. Means that they will not become the arbitrary, so that the Constitution has made the provision of check and balances over each of the organ of the government. Means they are individually accountable and they are collectively accountable. In both the ways they are accountable, and the act which are done by them, they are accountable for that act particularly, individually and collectively both. So it end up the tyranny, or it end up the arbitrariness of the legislature, of the executive, or the judiciary as well. So, another thing of the rule of law, or the merit of the rule of law, is that it protects the individual's right. How it will protect the individual's right? Say for example, if we talk about the part 3rd of the Constitution, or the fundamental rights of the Constitution, we have the right to life with dignity, equality, freedom of speech and expression. So many rights are there which has been covered under part 3rd of the Constitution. There are 6 fundamental rights are there, and various rights have been mentioned in that 6 articles. So in that particular things, the individual's rights has been given. If the right has been given, as I have earlier mentioned, if the right has been given only and there is no implementation mechanism is there, then these rights are of no use.
Great.
So
Doctor,
yeah, sure. Can I have just one more minute or two?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So to conclude it, I can say that if the rights have been given to us and there is no implementation mechanism and there is no rule of law, then these rights are of useless. So to implement these rights, the Constitution has provided the mechanism to implement these rights in a very lucid manner. We can go to the court, but remember the things that if we are having the rights, we are having the duties too. If we are demanding the right, if we are claiming the right, we have to abide by the duties which has been mentioned or given by the Constitution. Thank you for patiently listening, and thank you for the organizers.
No, thanks to you, sir. You came. I think we should invite only one lawyer, because lawyers won't stop speaking, isn't it? Like teachers, they speak for 40 minutes. Even if you tell them 10 minutes.
Okay.
I would like to thank Abhishek. Abhishek, you did it in a very short time. I would like to thank Aparna ma'am, Kaveri ma'am, Dr. Imran, Madam Kritika from Vijay Bhumi University. I would like to thank all the students, Devika Kumari, Grisha Anand, Kinshul, Mohammad Arif, Shubh, Simra, Shloka, Tejas Khurana, Tripti, Vaibhav Chaudhary, and many more. Thank you very much, Abhishek sir. Thank you, Imran sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. My
Thank
side
you,
also.
sir.
Thank you.
Sir.
Thank you,
Kritika
both
ma'am.
the speakers.